Hi, Steve Johan from Horsepower Chrome and Rust Show. Welcome you to the Windshield View. We interview some of the coolest people in the world of cars. And in this week's episode, we chat with Lance Standar, owner of Superformance and parent company Hillbank, maker of the Shelby Cobra. Lance shares how he took the company and transformed it into what it is today. For more about Horsepower Chrome and Rust and to listen to the entire show, visit us at horsepowerchromeandrust.podomatic.com. Now let's listen in to this week's show.
My mind's out of gear and my heart's in overdrive. I've everything to fear. I ain't never been more alive.
Welcome to Horsepower Chrome and Rust. For the first half of the Windshield View, this week we are talking with Lance Standar, the owner of Hillbank's Auto Group in
Superformance.
Superformance.
How are you, Lance?
Yeah.
Hi there, guys. How's it going?
It's
Oh,
going
good.
excellently. I hope we didn't disturb you in the midst of designing some other crazed supercar.
No, we just take it easy. Got home about half an hour ago.
Nice.
Ah, good.
All right.
Well, appreciate you jumping in with us. So, like Shane said in the opening, you're the owner of Hillbank Auto Group and also Superformance. I would like to know about both of those.
Yes, me
So,
too.
tell us a little bit about Hillbank and how you got that started.
Okay, so the background is Hillbank is an old family-owned company that comes from South Africa originally, and that's where I came 22 years ago.
I thought I heard a little
and I
South
brought
Africa in there.
Yeah, and I brought the Hillbank name across, and it basically got its name. My dad gave the company the name about 40-odd years ago, called it Hillbank, on the hill next to the bank, and called it Hillbank.
Of course.
And
Makes sense.
that stuck with us. And so we started a small hill bank in Costa Mesa, Southern California, selling the Superformance replica Cobras. And that grew, and when we looked again, the company Superformance was available, and the owner at the time was looking at just concentrating on the manufacturing of cars and not the distribution and worldwide sales. And he offered me the business, and we took it on, and we bought Superformance and all the intellectual property and the tooling and everything in South Africa. We don't own the factory, but we own everything to do with Superformance. And Superformance grew, and Superformance just sells to dealers. It does not sell to the public. Hillbank is a company that retails to the public Superformance and other cars. And then eventually we negotiated with Shelby, and we got the license to manufacture the Shelby Cobras, and later on the full distribution of all Shelby Cobras, Shelby GT40s, Shelby Daytonas, and anything else that Shelby built. The FIA Cobras, the Sebring Cobras, we do all of that for Shelby American.
Super. And Superformance while we're at it. But I was just looking at the website, and I go back far enough that I remember the old AC Bristols. And
Okay.
and what I'm dating myself, I suppose, but I do remember, what the initial kind of inspiration was. And of course, when the Cobras themselves, came out, it was such a step up. I mean, it was just huge, while remaining true to the design, the basic body and the design of the car. But man, the performance went through the roof. Now, I know that there are a couple of other aftermarket companies that make replicas of the Cobras. I'm sure they're under license and everything like that, but they're not. They're the purists will say that it's not
No.
true.
Yeah, actually, to correct you, there are other replica companies, but we are the only company licensed by Carroll Shelby to produce Shelby cars, and the Superformance is the only licensed replica.
Okay. So I was heading there to try to see, just what the arrangement was, because yours, looking at what's on the website, yours are dead on. I mean, it is the car.
We try our best to get as close as possible.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit, because I think the confusion comes because I know you and I talked about this before the show. You manufacture them, but then you sell them through distribution or dealers, in Shelby America as one of the dealers. So you see your product in their factory or in their showroom, but you also sell them worldwide through dealerships, right?
Yes, that's correct. So all Shelby dealers sell Shelby product, and we distribute the Shelby 60s cars. So Shelby American does all the new stuff, Mustangs, trucks, and all the rest. And Shelby American also sells, of course, the Cobras and GT40s and all the cars we manufacture too.
Right.
but you also sell your Superflow Superformance cars to other dealerships all over the way. Is correct?
Yes, we sell all over the world. Superformance and a company that we distribute the Shelby vehicles under, Shelby Legendary Cars, sells to dealers throughout the world.
So when you have a car or a group of cars that are so iconic, they're so evocative of just about everything that supercars are all about, performance cars. How do you decide what standard equipment, what optional equipment, what sort of package that you put together? How do you decide what's the right thing? What goes into the R&D of producing one of these things?
It's not difficult for us because we actually copied what Carroll did. Carroll had all this correct. He knew what was the next step that needed to happen. It started with a little slab side Cobra, which was the AC, as you'd mentioned earlier.
Right.
And the best example of talking about the little AC Cobra was it was a British car with that light handling of a British car with now an American powertrain in it, which just completed the car and changed the whole characteristics of the car, but still a very cool driving car.
Oh, sure.
So Carroll went in. From there on, he developed the Sebring Roadster, which were the Cobras that really won a lot of races. And then he went to the next step, the FIA Cobra, and that got a world championship, connected with the Daytona. So it tells you that what he did was correct. We just had to do the same as he did. And, of course, we brought some modern manufacturing techniques in, and, of course, more modern componentry, better brakes and stuff like that. But the basic car, you're getting the real feel, the real deal, as if you bought something in 1965. And we tell everybody, in one of our showrooms, you can relive 1960s, the 1965 cars, and the best of them, and we have them all available.
That's so just now, truly amazing.
Wow. Now, do you sell these with the complete drivetrain, the engines and all that, or do you sell them without the engines?
So at this time, we're not allowed to sell them with the drivetrain. We're not allowed to sell them with the engine and the transmission. So there are installers around the country that will complete the car for the customer. They put the engine and the transmission in. We are really sitting waiting for the HR 22, the Low Volume Manufacturers Act, that was actually signed and passed and became an act in 2015. But we are waiting for the bureaucrats to get the rest of the regulations done. Now, it's really close. SEMA got involved and has helped us a tremendous amount, and SEMA has really got it passed almost over the goal line. There's just, and this is the last little straw that we're waiting to complete. And then we will be able to sell them as complete vehicles under low volume manufacturing federal regulations.
There you go. And what's the hallmark there in terms of a number of units that keeps you at low volume?
Yeah. So they're limiting us to 325 per manufacturer.
Okay. That's not bad for a specialty vehicle like that.
Very, very reasonable. It's a job creation bill. It's going to open small motor manufacturers, give guys a break to try and develop and then eventually become fully-fledged manufacturer. That is the plan for Superformance. That once we've really perfected the low-volume manufacturing, we'll naturally be looking at a mainstream federalized vehicle in the future.
Well, so I want to back that up because right now, because of not being in that classification, you are not able to actually put motors in these things and get them certified. Am I correct about that?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. Now, if we export, we can build them complete for export, but we can't build them complete and leave them in the U.S.
But when you export them, do you have to meet their standard of that country that it's going into?
What happens is we leave that up to the guys who buy the cars. We explain to them that they don't meet any federal standards for any country that we know of. But every country has its own regulations, and the guys that buy the cars come up with their own ideas on how to get them titled and registered in their countries.
Sure.
Oh, that is amazing because I think a lot of people don't realize all the rigmarole that goes into being a small producer of vehicles like yourself. What's that?
There's a lot of rules.
No.
Well, I was going to say
Lance, I have a question I want to ask you. We're just coming up to the break, so I'm going to have to wait until afterwards. But it has to do with the body design and the whole airflow characteristics of the car. And I'm going to take you back to 1954 when I ask it. So I'll let you think about that while we take a break here, and we are going to come back. So we got more from Lance Standar on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust. The Windshield View continues right after this.
More Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust after these messages.
This is Jerry Heasley, and you're listening to Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, the greatest show I've been on in at least the last year.
Back in Vehicle City.
Yes, we're back with the second half of the Windshield View, and Lance Standar is with us on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust. And for more information about their great company, where do people go to find out about your cars there, Lance?
Okay, you can go to superformance.com or hillbankusa.com or shelbylegendarycars.com.
Look at that. We're going to put links to those on the page.
Yeah, any one of those websites would lead you to all the dealers, and they all have their websites, and the information about the cars are all on those websites.
Super. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm looking at hillbankusa.com right now on my highly technical phone, and I'm looking at the Cobra, and I have to tell you, I have a friend who has a Cobra. It's a replica. I don't know whose it is. He's had it for a number of years, but I mean, the things are iconic, so it doesn't really matter, in a long sense who bought it,
Yes.
built it. But I do have a question for you. You may know the answer to this, you may not. But that body style, that original styling that came up with, obviously they borrowed heavily from the AC Bristol, but back in the day, probably 10 years earlier, late 50s, mid 50s, there were cars that were in the Oscar circuit, and one of them was produced by Maserati. They did a body that was very, very similar to that kind of shape. The nose was a little swoopier. The Oscar body Maseratis were pretty cool in the day, all birdcage frame and aluminum bodies and stuff like that. Very, very slick cars. A friend of mine had one. Of course, by the time he got it, it had been gutted. Essentially, the Maserati engine and transmission and drivetrain were gone and had been replaced with other stuff. But I know it's it's a cringe. But if I tell you what was in it, well, it was a 215 Buick that they had put in there, and so it was a frightening.
And that was quite common.
It was.
It was a more reliable engine.
It was a frightening car to drive. But what the question I was going to ask you was, do you know, given the the iconic and classic styling of these cars, do you know what the original inspiration was? Was it strictly the AC, or was it a combination of other vehicles that were around at the time?
If you're talking about what led Carroll to doing the Cobra, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Or do you mean the actual body?
Well, the body itself, yeah.
The actual body, if you talk about the actual body shape, and you've nailed it, Maserati had a car that looked very similar. Of course, AC Bristol was around in the 50s also.
Right.
So did Ferrari. If you look at the old Ferraris, there's a lot of them that look similar to the Cobra.
That's right.
So that shape came from the 50s. So Carroll's inspiration was, he wanted to build a sports car, and he had heard that AC had lost their engine supplier. And they had a perfect car in the UK, but they had no engine supplier. And, of course, he went over to them. And what a lot of people don't know, but he has mentioned this a couple of times, he actually went to Chevrolet first. And Chevrolet weren't interested. They said, no, we've got a sports car. We've got the Corvette. We don't need it.
Right.
And then he went to Ford. And he got the engine, and he went back to AC car. He initially went to Ford and said, look, I've got this car. I've got it all signed up and agreed. And at that stage, he didn't. And he then went to AC and said he's agreed with Ford that he could get the engines. And,
of course.
Actually, Ford had just given him a few engines. And that's how he put the whole thing together. He was a very enthusiastic guy and somebody that made stuff happen. He just knew he could make it happen, and he did.
Well, of course, now that Ford versus Ferrari is out in the theaters, people are getting kind of a look at. I'm admittedly a romanticized version, but nevertheless, a lot about how Carroll Shelby did what he did, and the guy had chutzpah. I mean, he had guts to do some of the things. You gotta love. I understand it's a Hollywood movie and there's a certain amount of portrayal, but he was known for doing almost all of that stuff, and that's a salesman. Well, that's a salesman.
And more. He took on the impossible and what everybody thought wasn't in any way possible, and he accomplished it. He was very accomplished in everything he did. He was just a true entrepreneur and never say die attitude. I always say in our business, when people say, "How did you get this far? How did you get it this way?" And I just say, "I'm just too stupid to give up."
There you go.
Oh,
and
man,
that's really what it is.
Yeah,
that's what gets it going.
Well, speaking
of, probably noticed,
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I was going to say, so in the movie, that was really exciting for us. We were one of the suppliers. We didn't supply all the cars, as many people think we did. We didn't. We supplied all the Cobras were supplied by us. And we supplied 2 of the GT40s, some Shelby Daytonas, and even some Mustangs.
Nice.
And, of course, the Cobras were the interesting part.
Of course. Well, and so what I was going to ask, since the Cobras are as much of a landmark as they are, I'm noticing on your page that the Superformance Mark III 20th anniversary model has now become the thing that I want under my Christmas tree this coming year. My wife may not buy into this, but one can hope. How did you come up with the package for that particular car? Because I have to tell you, if you're listening here, no matter where you are, go to your computer or your phone right now and go to hillbankusa.com and go to look at the Superformance Mark III, the 20th anniversary edition. As near as I can tell, it's got everything that a Cobra is supposed to have, but tell me how you came up with that.
Well, firstly, unfortunately, we can't supply your 20th anniversary anymore. They all sold out. And
that doesn't mean I can't want one, Lance. I can want one.
Yeah, we could find you a used one. They were successful. I have to give credit here to one of my dealer friends that had done a car very similar. And we just liked the concept of the way he did it. And then we made a couple of changes. And the stripe we ended up doing was a ghost stripe in that car. And it's a gold ghost stripe. And the car just looks amazing. When you see it in the sun, it's mind-blowing. If you see it in the dark night, it just looks black with a kind of a very light stripe that you can hardly notice. It's a ghost stripe. Yeah. And then, of course, the bigger wheels, we're putting the gold in. It just was a striking car.
It's gorgeous.
Every one of our anniversaries, the 10th anniversary were pretty cool also. They were either gray or sunset red, and we had gray interior and stuff like that. But I think the 20th was probably the best one we've done to date. But hang on, we've got our 25th coming soon. So
I see.
Well, what's the base price on one of these things?
They started approximately $52,000.
Right.
And when we say base, ours are pretty complete. The roller is all painted, all wired, wheels and tires, all the electrical is run, and if you hook up the battery, everything comes on and works. The fuel lines are run, the brake lines are done, the brakes are fully functional. It's as if you drove a car into a workshop, removed the engine and transmission and drive shaft. The rest is all there. We supply the headers and the side pipes included at that price.
That's pretty amazing for a car at that level. Yeah. I mean, you're going to spend X amount on a powertrain anyway, no matter what. But that stage of the game, that's extremely realistic price wise.
Well, and Lance, I was going to ask you, what are kind of like the favorite, maybe let's say the top 3 favorite power plants for this car.
So basically, it's been the Windsor engine all along in the Superformance car. Yeah. When we do the Superformance, everybody goes with a 351 Windsor, stroke to 402, 427, either from Ford Racing, from Roush, from Blueprint Engines, or other companies like that. In the Shelby Cobras, 90% of them get the big block FE from Shelby Engines. Aluminum block Shelby engine, and that's the most common in the actual Shelby 427 we sell. But in the Superformance car, most common is the Windsor small block 427.
I'm sorry, we have to take a momentary break here. Shane is drooling on the microphone. Sorry. I would talk Cobras with you all night long, but I do have to ask about the GT40. It's another total icon, and of course the Ford versus Ferrari movie features it, prominently. Tell us a little bit about that one.
So the GT40 was very exciting for us. After we did the Cobra, we did the Shelby Daytona, and that took us approximately 5 years. But we were in discussions, in negotiations to build the GT40. And Superformance, after the year 2000, did not want to do anything that wasn't licensed by the original manufacturer or the company or anything to do. But we had to have credibility for the car, and it took us a long time negotiating with different companies and to get the correct information to do the car correctly. Eventually, we had sat down with SAPA, who were the owners of the trademark, GT40 trademark. We then also had negotiations with Lee Holman, who had lots of blueprints and stuff for the GT40. We met with ex-employees of Ford Advanced Vehicles in the UK, got all the blueprints, got all the information we could there, more from owners that were in the US. It was a hell of a process. We actually started roughly around 2001 with the development of the GT40. And the first ones hit the US in 2006. So it took us 5 years on the GT40, but we wanted to do it correct. It's an all-steel monocoque, over 220 pieces of steel, pressed steel, welded together to make the original Ford monocoque that was done. And we have done some modifications, some upgrades, better steel. We're using zinc-coated steel, so we don't have the rust issues that they had back then, and a couple other things. Because the GT40 was built as a race car, not really as a street car, and it was strong enough to finish a race and light enough to finish the race. So we've had to make some changes to make it a little stronger, because I've got owners now with 60 and 70,000 miles on their GT40s, and that wasn't one of the plans for the car originally.
Wow. So now I want to take you back for a moment. Where are these manufactured? You said, are they still manufactured in South Africa?
Yes. All my cars are done in South Africa, all the fiberglass cars and all the GT40 cars. Some of the aluminum bodies we source from England, Poland. We've even got a source in Italy for some of the aluminum bodies. And then they ship to South Africa, painted, completed, built as rollers, and shipped to the U.S.
Well, when you consider all that different factoring that goes into building one of these rolling pieces of art, your pricing is very reasonable. Because you're sourcing it from all over the world, which that's what the big boys do. So you're right there in line already, and you're bringing business to all the different communities that are involved with this. So that kudos. We're hoping and praying that you get this bill goes through and you can really move forward on your expansion, because I know you got some other ideas down the road.
Yeah, what's coming up?
Yeah, no, we've got a couple other. We've been licensed by Ford to build the GR1. If you're familiar with the Shelby GR1,
sure. Absolutely.
It was a concept car from 2004. Absolutely beautiful, and we're in development, but we're waiting for low volume manufacture, because we need to have that car as a complete unit when we sell it, and we'd like to do it under low volume. There's other iconic cars from the 60s, from different, now we're moving a little away from Ford, but to one of the other big manufacturers, and I'm going to leave it at that for now.
Okay.
It's an exciting car that we've got in negotiations to come from Superformance also.
Now, what are you finding that demographic-wise, are you reaching into a younger market, or is it with that have a little bit of money, or is this what's your mean demographic that you're reaching for right now? Because it's such an iconic, a thing out there, the 60s.
Well, it has changed for us a little. We were mostly baby boomers and older, believe it or not. But it started changing, and we've actually had a big run of millennials, if you can believe that. And when we ask them, how do you know about the Cobra? And it's usually from a computer game. And, of course, now they will tell us they've seen it in the Ford versus Ferrari movie. Think it's the coolest car. It's different to everything else on the road. And a lot of them are earning a lot of money, and they want something special in their garage that doesn't depreciate like any other new car you put in the garage.
Sure.
That's
and
one thing about our cars.
in fairness, muscle cars are back.
Yes,
With kind of a vengeance.
Yeah.
So, the people who are, you could get a Hellcat or you could get one of the new, Corvettes and stuff. But a lot of people look at the broader spectrum of where those cars came from. And so they're naturally going to be driven towards, the GTs and the Cobras and the other things that sort of started the whole game.
Correct. And now with historic racing really getting a lot more popular, it's difficult to get the old cars racing. A lot of the GT40s racing in Europe are our cars. They're accurate enough and they are accepted by the sanctioning body. And we have a lot of GT40s FIA passported in Europe.
And I would suppose, cost notwithstanding, it's probably a lot more effective and smart to run one of your cars, a newer car with the newer technology and the better brakes and all that kind of stuff, than a car that's, a survivor where, if you wrap it around something, it's not going to be replaceable. Those cars are getting, they're kind of sitting aside more.
That's part of it. But when we race in FIA, we have to be 1,000% correct. We have to have the old brakes. We have to have companies that recreate those old brakes. All that. The only parts they allow us are safety parts like seatbelt systems and stuff like that. But the car has to be the same as the old cars that are running there. It's got to have the same componentry, and they're very strict.
Super. Very strict. Well, Lance, it has been super talking with you. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface. We got to bring him back on. Yeah, we could easily do this, for another couple of hours, but we do have to get out. Hillbank USA, let's see. What's the other two websites?
Superformance.com,
that's right.
And that's SUperformance.com, or ShelbyLegendaryCars.com.
Excellent. We will put those on our website. Thank you, Lance Standar, for stepping in to Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust this week.
Thanks very much, guys. Enjoyed it.
Right back with these messages.
For more about Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust and to listen to the entire show, visit us at horsepowerchromeandrust.podomatic.com.